The wind swept low across the Sierra foothills, carrying with it the bitter tang of pine smoke and dust. Evening shadows stretched long over the valley, painting the dirt trails in stripes of orange and violet. Crickets had just begun their chorus when John Coulter, the man the frontier folks only knew as the Mountain Man, rode his mule out of the timberline. He was a broad-shouldered figure, cloaked in buckskin, his hair and beard grown thick, tangled by years of solitude in the high country. His rifle lay across his saddle, and a tomahawk hung from his belt, worn from use. Coulter wasn't a man who sought company. The mountains had been his church and his coffin alike, and he preferred elk for neighbors rather than men. But the Wild West had a way of dragging even the most solitary men back into the affairs of people. That evening as Coulter descended the ridge he saw her. A girl no more than 12 stumbling along the rocky trail. Her face streaked with dirt, tears cutting pale rivulets through the dust. She wore a simple homespun dress, torn at the shoulder, and her shoes were nearly gone from running. She looked small against the vast sweep of sagebrush and ridges, like a lone sparrow caught in a storm. She saw Coulter, froze for a moment, then ran to him. "Mister," her voice cracked, breathless. "Mister, please, you gotta help me there." She swallowed hard, chest heaving. "They're beating my mom. Please save her." Coulter dismounted, slow, wary. "Hold up now? Who's beating her? The settlers?" The girl gasped, gripping his sleeve. "Because she's Chinese. They say she don't belong. They dragged her out by the well, mister, and they're—" Her words broke into sobs. Coulter's face hardened. He had seen plenty of cruelty in his years. Gold-hungry miners knifing each other for dust. Cattle barons starving families off their land. Vigilantes stringing up men before sunrise. But hearing it from the lips of a child, trembling in terror, it hit deeper than he liked to admit. "What's your name, girl?" he asked. "Lion," she whispered. "My mom's May. We came from the camp by the river. Papa died building the railroad. Mama works the laundry now, but the men say she ain't worth nothing." Her fists clenched tight. "They're gonna kill her, mister." Coulter's jaw worked silent. He glanced back at the mountain trail, where solitude waited, where no man's business could find him. But then he looked at the girl, her dark eyes burning with desperation, her small hand clinging to his coat as though he were the last post in a storm. The Mountain Man let out a low breath. "Take me to her." The settlement lay about 3 miles down the valley, a crooked scatter of clapboard houses, barns, and tents pitched around the promise of a new gold strike. Smoke from cook fires coiled into the sky, and the sound of rough laughter carried over the wind. As Coulter and Lion approached, the scene sharpened. A circle of men stood in the dirt square, their boots planted wide, faces lit by the yellow glow of lanterns. Inside the ring, a woman knelt, Leon's mother. May's black hair spilled loose around her shoulders, her hands bound behind her. A bruise marred her cheek, and her plain blouse was torn from the blows. The settlers jeered, one spitting in the dirt, another swinging a rope in his hand like a signal of what was to come. "She's a leech, I tell you," a bearded miner barked. "Tacking our coin, undercutting decent folks." "She ain't decent folk," another spat. "She's China trash. Look at her, don't belong in a white town." Coulter's gut turned cold. He'd seen lynchings before, and he knew the sound of a crowd about to tip from cruel words into bloody action. Leon cried out, "Mama!" She tried to run forward, but Coulter caught her arm. "Stay behind me." His voice was low, steady, but it carried the weight of a man who had stared down wolves. The Mountain Man stepped into the ring of lamplight. The jeering fell quiet, suspicion sliding over the faces of the men. "Who the hell are you?" the bearded miner demanded. Coulter's gaze swept the crowd. "A man who don't like the look of what's happening here." Laughter broke sharp and ugly. "Ain't your business, stranger." The Coulter's hand hovered near his rifle, though he didn't raise it. "Not yet, I reckon it is now." What followed unfolded like a powder keg catching flame. Words turned to shoves, shoves to fists. Coulter moved like a bear loosed from its den, striking with raw force, breaking the ring apart. He grabbed May, cut her bonds with his knife, and pushed her behind him. "Run!" He growled to Leon and May both. "Get clear." But the settlers weren't about to let go, a gun cocked. The metallic cut the night air. "Mountain Man or no," the bearded miner snarled. "You'll die sticking your nose where it don't belong." Coulter's eyes narrowed. He had seen too many men think a gun gave them power. He knew the truth. It only made them careless. The square erupted in chaos. Pistols barked, boots thundered, shouts rose. May and Leon scrambled for cover, ducking behind a wagon as bullets tore into the night. Coulter fired once, twice, each shot deliberate, dropping the armed men while keeping himself between the mob and the women. When the smoke cleared, the ground bore its tally: 2 settlers dead, another moaning with a broken arm. The rest scattered, dragging their wounded pride into the dark. The lanterns swung on their hooks, shadows dancing across the battered square. May clutched her daughter, trembling. "We can't stay here. They'll come back." Coulter wiped the powder smoke from his beard. You're right. He looked at the horizon, black mountains cutting against a star-flooded sky. Pack what you can. You're coming with me. They rode out before dawn, Coulter leading on his mule, May and Lion following on a battered wagon they salvaged. The valley lay quiet behind them, but Coulter knew quiet never lasted. Men with hate in their blood didn't forget. As the first rays of sunlight lit the land, May spoke for the first time since they'd fled. Her voice was soft, accented, but strong. Why did you help us, mountain man? Coulter didn't look back, because no one else would. The trail stretched endless ahead, dusty, dangerous, full of wolves, both four-legged and two. The kind of trail that tested whether a man or a family could endure. And so began their journey, bound not by blood, but by survival in a West that took more than it ever gave. But already Coulter knew the mob wouldn't be the last enemy hunting them. The real war was only beginning. The sun burned over the high desert plains, washing the land in blinding gold. Sagebrush bent beneath the dry wind, and a hawk circled overhead, its cry echoing against the ridges. John Coulter rode at the head of their ragged column, just himself, May, and young Leon, looking less like travelers and more like fugitives fleeing the devil's own hounds. His mule trudged steady, but the wagon wheels behind them groaned, every rut in the trail threatening to snap an axle. May sat rigid on the wagon bench, her hands tight on the reins. Lion dozed against her mother's side, her small frame limp from exhaustion. They had been riding since nightfall, stopping only when the animals threatened to collapse. Coulter scanned the horizon the way a wolf does, always searching for signs, dust rising from riders, glints of sunlight off rifles, the unnatural silence that comes before an ambush. He had lived too many years in the wilderness not to feel when danger crept, and danger was close. By noon, they found shelter in the ruins of an old way station, a roof half collapsed, timbers blackened from fire. Coulter dismounted and checked the ground. Tracks scarred the dirt, wagon wheels and hoof prints baked into hard clay. He grunted, "We ain't the first ones through here." May climbed down, helping Leon stretch her legs. "Is it safe, Seth?" Coulter shook his head. "Ain't no such thing out here, only safer than the last place." They watered the mule and horse at a shallow trough. Coulter knelt in the shade, tore a strip of jerky with his teeth, and watched May carefully. She moved with grace even in exhaustion, every gesture quiet, deliberate. But there was steel under her wariness. He could see it in the way she shielded Leon with her body, even when they were alone. Leon wandered over, holding a pebble she'd found. "Mr. Coulter?" "Yeah, girl?" She looked up at him, earnest. "You ever had a family?" The question hit harder than any bullet. Coulter stared at her, the memory of a woman's laugh, long buried, stirring like ghosts in the dust. He cleared his throat, rough. "Had one once, long time ago." "What happened?" "Same thing that happens to most folk out here. West takes more than it gives." Lion lowered her eyes, silent. May's gaze flicked toward him, something unreadable passing in her look. Sympathy, or perhaps understanding. That night the fire burned low. Coyotes howled from the hills, and May hummed an old lullaby in Cantonese until Leon slept. Coulter sat apart, rifle across his knees, staring into the dark. When May finally spoke, her voice was soft, careful. "You saved us, but now you carry our burden too. Those men won't forgive what you did." Coulter didn't move. "Don't reckon I care much about forgiveness." "They'll follow," she pressed. "They will hunt us. Men with hate in their hearts don't stop." He glanced at her. "I know, that's why we keep moving." Silence stretched. Only the crackle of the fire filled it. "Why do you live alone, mountain man?" she asked. He looked into the flames, eyes hard. "Because out here, the only law that don't break is the law you make for yourself." May nodded, but she didn't press further. She simply folded her blanket tighter around Leon and closed her eyes. They reached the next town 3 days later. Redstone was little more than a saloon, a blacksmith shop, a sheriff's office, and a scatter of clapboard houses leaning against the wind. As their wagon rolled down the single dusty street, shutters creaked open. Eyes followed them, hard, suspicious. Coulter didn't like it. Towns like this thrived on whispers, and strangers brought trouble. At the saloon, he tied up the mule and went inside, leaving Mai and Leon at the wagon. The place stank of whiskey and sweat. Cards slapped against tables, boots scraped, spurs jingled. A piano played off-key in the corner, barely cutting over the drunken voices. Coulter stepped to the bar. "Whiskey," he said. The barkeep poured without question, sliding the glass across. Coulter drank slow, letting his eyes roam the room. That's when he heard it. "You hear about them Chinamen over in Dry Creek. Got what was comin'. One of 'em slipped the noose, though. A woman and her brat. Reckon they ain't far. Got a price on their heads now. Sheriff Harlan's paying." Coulter's jaw tightened. He set the glass down heavy. The men at the table noticed him staring. One smirked. "Somethin' on your mind, mountain rat?" Coulter stood, his shadow long under the lamplight. "Yeah, you boys talk too damn loud. The smirk faded, hands drifted toward gun belts. Before the first could draw, Coulter's rifle was in his hands, leveled. The saloon froze. Even the piano stopped. "You even think about it," Coulter growled, "and I'll drop you before your iron clears leather." The men backed down, muttering curses. Coulter lowered the rifle but didn't holster it. He turned and strode out, mounting the wagon in one smooth motion. "Go," he barked to May. She snapped the reins and the wagon jolted forward. Behind them, men spilled out of the saloon, shouting. One fired a shot into the air. The chase had begun. The wagon thundered down the trail, dust rising in clouds. Leon clung to her mother, eyes wide with fear. May cracked the reins, urging the horse faster, while Coulter twisted in his seat, rifle braced on the wagon's edge. Riders closed in from behind, 6, maybe 7, their pistols flashing. Coulter fired. One rider tumbled from his saddle. Another swerved, horse screaming as it collapsed under the bullet. "Hold steady," Coulter roared. May's hands gripped the reins like iron, guiding the wagon over rocks and ruts. The wheels groaned, one nearly snapping, but she held it together with sheer will. Bullets whined past. One punched through the wagon bed inches from Leon's leg. She screamed, May pulling her close with one arm while steering with the other. Coulter fired again, the shot ringing like thunder. Another rider fell. The rest slowed, fear overtaking their fury. They pulled back, regrouping, watching the wagon vanish into the scrubland. Only when the dust cleared and silence fell did May finally exhale, trembling. "They won't stop," she whispered. "No," Coulter said grimly. "They won't." "Which means we stop running." May looked at him, startled. "What do you mean?" Coulter's eyes burned with the fire of a man who'd had enough. Would take the fight to them. That night, under the cold stars, Coulter laid out his plan. "They'll expect us to keep riding south. So instead we circle back. Hit 'em where it hurts. Redstone. If we cut the head off, the rest scatter." May's brow furrowed. "You'd attack an entire town." "Not a town. Just the rot at its heart. Sheriff Harlan, the men he's hired, the ones put that bounty on your heads. Without them, Redstone ain't nothing but dust." May hesitated. "And if we fail?" Coulter looked at her, his face carved from stone. "Then we die fightin', instead of runnin'." For a long time, May said nothing. Then, finally, she nodded. Leon, listening quietly, whispered, "I'm not scared. Not if you're with us." Coulter's throat tightened. He looked at the girl and felt something stir he hadn't felt in years, a purpose beyond survival. The next day, Redstone woke to smoke. The stable went up first, flames licking the sky. Then the gunpowder shed. By the time the sheriff's men stumbled into the street, Coulter was waiting, rifle steady, eyes cold. The fight that followed was chaos. Gunfire cracked, men shouted, horses screamed. May defended Leon with nothing but a kitchen knife until Coulter tossed her a fallen pistol. She fired, her hands shaking, but her aim true. One by one, the men fell. Finally, it was only Sheriff Harlan left, standing in the middle of the street, revolver trembling in his grip. "You ain't the law," Harlan spat. "You're a damned savage." Coulter stepped forward, rifle raised. "Maybe, but at least I ain't a coward who beats women." The shot echoed like judgment. Harlan crumpled, dust swallowing him whole. When the smoke cleared, Redstone was finished. The survivors fled, their power broken. Coulter, May, and Lion stood in the ruins of the street, the dawn light breaking over them. "What now?" May asked, her voice quiet. Coulter looked west, where the land stretched endless, wild. "Until," he said, "we carve a place where no one tells you you don't belong." But for the first time, May's lips curved into the faintest smile. She took Leon's hand. Coulter stood beside them, not as a savior, not as a wanderer, but as family. The frontier was merciless, but together, maybe, just maybe, they could survive it.